practicing attorney without looking at a file.
So you would need a
Period.
factual predicate to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
Not a summary by you sitting here. Yes, sir.
And not a summary by the president either, right?
Absolutely.
The most powerful chair of American justice and being asked the simplest question possible, not about a complicated legal case, not about obscure constitutional law, but a question so plain a school kid could answer it. And yet in that room under the bright lights, the answer never came. Instead, what we saw was silence, deflection, and the kind of hesitation that reveals more than any admission ever could. That was the moment the hearing shifted from routine politics to something much more unsettling, a glimpse into whether loyalty could be valued higher than truth at the top levels of power.
So a summary by the president or his desire to investigate Jack Smith would not be enough for you to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
I will look at the facts and evidence in any case.
And sitting here, sitting here today,
Senator, 72% of Americans
I only have
have
7
lost
minutes.
faith in the Department of Justice.
Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Sitting here today, yes or no?
Senator, I will look at the facts and the circumstances.
You can't answer that question. You're not a part of the department yet. There's no worry about divulging law enforcement sensitive information. So just tell us, are you aware? Just tell us, are you aware of a factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Yes or no?
Senator, what I'm hearing on the news is
Are you aware
horrible.
of a?
Do I know if he committed a crime? I have not.
You seem reluctant to answer a simple question. Let me ask you a different simple question. The president also wants to jail Liz Cheney. Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual basis to investigate Liz Cheney? Yes or no?
Senator, that's a hypothetical, and I'm not going to answer that question.
No, it's not hypothetical. I'm asking you, sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Senator, no one has asked me
know.
to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a hypothetical.
The president has called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate.
But the president has
We're
called,
also worried about Liz Cheney, Senator.
The president has
You know what
called
we
for
should
this.
be worried about?
Ms. Bondi, please answer my questions.
California right now
You are
is
aware,
through the roof.
Ms. Bondi,
Your robberies are 87% higher than the national average.
My question is this.
That's what I want to be focused on, Senator.
Do you have the power to say no to the president?
General.
And what you're suggesting today by your non-answer is you don't have the independence to say no to the president. So let me ask you a different question. It also requires you, if you're going to be a good attorney general, to be able to tell hard truths to the president. So my questions now are, can you tell hard truths to the president? So let me start with an easy truth that you could speak to the president. Can you tell us, can you tell him that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election? Can you say that? Do you have the independence to say that? Do you have the gravitas, the stature, the intestinal fortitude to say, Donald Trump, you lost the 2020 election? Can you tell us that here today?
Senator, what I can tell you is I will never play politics. You're trying to engage me in a gotcha. I won't do it. I won't play politics with any ongoing investigation.
So let me ask you another.
Like you did leaking your colleague Devin Nunes's memo.
If you can't answer the question, let me ask you a different, what should be a simple truth, not a hard one. Was there massive fraud affecting the result of the 2020 election, yes or no?
Senator, I'm glad you asked that question, if you'll let me answer what I saw in Pennsylvania.
No, I asked a simple question about massive fraud.
I can only tell you what I saw in Pennsylvania.
I know you want to answer a different question, but my question is, can you tell us whether there was massive fraud affecting the results of the 2020 election, yes or no? Was there or was there not?
I can tell you what I saw when I went as an advocate to the campaign.
That's not my question. So you can't answer that question. You can't speak that even easy truth to us, let alone to the president. So let me ask you a different question. It will also be important that you give good advice to the president. Are you prepared to advise the president not to pardon people who beat police officers?
Senator, as I said, the pardons are at the direction of the president. We will look and we will advise. I will look at every case on a case.
So
let me finish. On a case-by-case basis.
Okay, good.
And I abhor violence to police officers.
Follow up with that. So will it be your advice to the president, Mr. President? I know you said you want to issue hundreds of pardons on day one. Will it be your advice to the president? No, Mr. President, I need to go over them on a case-by-case basis. Do not issue blanket pardons. Will that be your advice to the president?
Senator, I have not looked at any of those files. If confirmed, I will look at the files
and
for the pardons, as well as the ongoing investigation.
will you be able to review hundreds of cases on day one?
I will look at every file I am asked to look at.
Of course you won't. So will you advise the president?
Can I answer the question?
Well, my question is,
I would have plenty of staff. You said, of course you want.
You'll be able to review hundreds of cases on the first day?
I'm not going to mislead this body nor you.
All right, let me ask another question. You don't want to answer that. Let me ask
You were
another question.
censured by
It will
Congress,
also-
Senator, for
it will
comments just
also-
like this that
it
are
will
so reckless.
It will also be important for you to be able to preserve the records, the evidence of the department. Are you ready to commit that none of the evidence in the January 6th investigation will be destroyed under your watch?
Senator, I will follow the law. I will consult with ethical officials in the
Do you
department.
see any ethical basis to destroy evidence in the January 6th investigation? Then why can't you answer the question? Why can't you say, I commit to this committee, we will never destroy the evidence in the January 6th investigation? Why can't you give this committee and the American people that assurance?
Are you frightened because evidence was destroyed against President Trump that was false? Is that why you're
Why do
frightened
you
now?
have
I can't
difficulty?
believe this is even.
Why do you have difficulty answering that question?
I can't believe
Why do you
you're
have
asking such a
difficulty?
question.
Why do you have difficulty promising to preserve evidence at the Department of Justice? Why is that a difficult question?
I will follow the law.
It shouldn't be a difficult question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I know that you are pleased that we are moving to the end of round one. And we appreciate.
And in those first few minutes, you could feel the air tighten because this wasn't just a senator asking questions. This was a stress test of democracy itself. When Adam Schiff leaned in and pressed Pam Bondi, he wasn't looking for sound bites. He was asking whether the nation's next attorney general could tell hard truths, even when those truths made the most powerful man in the country uncomfortable. His opening salvo wasn't a trick. It wasn't some convoluted legal riddle. It was a test of independence. He asked if she could simply acknowledge reality, acknowledge what the rest of the world already knew, and yet she wouldn't say it. She called it a trap, a gotcha, but Schiff's point was obvious. If you can't tell the most basic truth, how can you ever promise to stand firm in the face of pressure that would inevitably come from the Oval Office? This wasn't just dodging a question, it was a signal, and everyone in that chamber felt it. The exchange might have sounded routine to casual listeners, but there's a reason why the room shifted. Schiff wasn't just asking for an opinion, he was drawing a line in the sand. He wanted to know if Bondi would be a servant of the law or a servant of power. And when the words didn't come, when all she could muster was vague language about not playing politics, it was clear that the line had already been blurred. For an attorney general, independence isn't optional, it's the entire job. And here under oath, in front of the nation, independence looked shaky. But Schiff didn't stop there. He pressed further, and what followed left no doubt. Next he turned the spotlight to the question of pardons, a subject dripping with history and consequences. Would Bondi, as Attorney General, advise the President not to blanket pardon those who assaulted police officers on January 6th? It should have been easy. The question wasn't about politics, it was about protecting the men and women who wore the badge that day. But once again, the answer wasn't a firm no, it wasn't even a clear commitment. Instead, Bondi gave a carefully polished line about reviewing cases one by one as if a stack of hundreds could realistically be combed through in the first hours of a new administration. Schiff pushed, incredulous, pointing out the impossibility of that claim. But her words didn't change. Case by case, file by file, a hollow answer delivered to buy time, to avoid taking a stand that might anger the man who expected her loyalty. This was the tell. Because at its core, the question wasn't really about paperwork or caseloads. It was about courage. It was about whether she would ever look the president in the eye and say no. Schiff's frustration was visible, because what he was really hearing was the absence of independence. If she couldn't commit to stopping violent offenders from walking free with the stroke of a pen, then what good would her office be? And if the Attorney General is unwilling to challenge power when it matters most, the rule of law itself becomes a stage prop, something that looks sturdy but collapses under the slightest push. Still, Schiff wasn't done. He moved to the most haunting test of all. It was about the preservation of evidence, specifically whether she could commit, right there, right then, to ensuring that no records from the January 6th investigation would ever be destroyed under her watch. Again, this wasn't a trick. It wasn't even a tough question. It was the kind of pledge any official sworn to uphold the law should make instinctively. But Bondi wouldn't say it. Instead, she leaned on a bureaucratic escape hatch. I will follow the law. I will consult with ethical officials in the department. Schiff pressed harder. Did she see any ethical basis at all to destroy evidence related to that attack? And yet still no straight answer. The refusal to commit to something so basic sent shivers through the room. Because if you can't even promise to preserve evidence, what hope is there that justice will ever be carried out? The moment stretched beyond politics. This was about trust. It was about whether the nation's top prosecutor could be relied upon to protect the foundation of justice, evidence itself. And in that silence, in that refusal to pledge what should have been obvious, the weight of the hearing became clear. This wasn't independence. This wasn't principle. This was hedging, protecting, calculating. It was the language of someone who understood loyalty, but not the courage it takes to stand up to power, and Schiff knew it. His frustration wasn't theater. It was a genuine alarm bell that the role of Attorney General, the role designed to be the people's lawyer, was at risk of being transformed into a shield for one man. As the questioning wore on, the picture grew sharper. This wasn't just about one nominee's reluctance, it was about a pattern where truth became negotiable, where facts could be softened or ignored if they clashed with loyalty. Schiff's questions weren't about relitigating the past, they were about the future, about whether the Department of Justice would stand firm when the next storm came. And every non-answer, every deflection, every vague promise about following the law, instead of committing to principle, pointed in the same direction. A justice system that bends when pressure is applied isn't justice at all. It's theater, and the American people deserve more than theater. What's chilling is that this wasn't the first time such a test had been given. History has seen officials in moments like these either rise to the occasion or crumble under the weight of power. The great ones made their names by saying no when it mattered most, by holding the line even when the consequences were personal. And here in this very room, when the line was drawn again, we saw hesitation instead of strength. We saw calculation instead of conviction, and that's what made Schiff's questioning so important. It wasn't about catching Bondi in a slip-up, it was about revealing what happens when principle is pitted against loyalty, and loyalty wins. What followed in the hearing was less about words and more about what wasn't said. Because in politics, silence can be deafening. Silence can expose fear, allegiance or weakness in ways speeches never could. And every unanswered question, every refusal to give a simple truth, painted the same portrait. One of an Attorney General nominee who couldn't bring herself to stand apart from the man who nominated her. Schiff's line of questioning, deliberate and sharp, wasn't just an exercise. It was a warning. A warning that the Department of Justice could once again be twisted into a tool for the powerful instead of a guardian for the people. Think about what was really on display in that chamber. It wasn't just a senator grilling a nominee, it was a clash over the soul of justice. Would truth still matter? Would evidence still be protected? Would violent offenders be held accountable no matter who they pledged loyalty to? Or would the answers shift depending on the needs of one man in power? These weren't abstract hypotheticals. They were real urgent questions with consequences that reach far beyond Washington. Because when the nation's top prosecutor can't commit to preserving evidence or acknowledging reality, the system itself begins to fray. Not in dramatic bursts, but in small silent erosions that add up until the foundation is gone. And that's why this hearing matters. It matters because democracy doesn't collapse overnight. It doesn't end in a single dramatic moment. It erodes quietly, one refusal to answer at a time, one deflection after another, one silence that becomes policy.